welcome or welcome back to my channel Hasty Books. I'm Camila. I am also back. Welcome to me back. It's been a while. I thought I would take a break of a week or two while there was some PhD stuff going, some house stuff going, and friends visiting, and then that turned into a few more weeks. But yeah, maybe I needed the break. I also struggled to read during this time in the last sort of 6 weeks. I listened to lots of audiobooks, mostly while renovating the house, painting, scraping wallpaper, more painting, yeah, whatever it was. I did a lot of listening. I think there was one weekend I finished 6 audiobooks in like 2 days. So there was a lot of it, but I really struggled to read until sort of late last week when I finally finished the last 2 books on the Women's Prize for Nonfiction shortlist. Yay! So, with the understanding, obviously, that the prize winner is being announced very soon. I want to say it's 2-3 weeks from when I'm filming this. And because I finally finished, I wanted to read the whole shortlist before sort of forming an opinion. And I'm bringing you this predictions and the reviews of the 6 books that made the nonfiction list. The video for the fiction list will be coming up. I'm still trying to finish the last book on that list, so hopefully next week. So overall thought, I loved the shortlist. I loved all 6 books, very much so, and I would be happy for any of them to win. Boom, that's my overall thought. Last year, I didn't get to read the whole shortlist before the prize was announced because I found it hard to get my hands on some of these books. I actually finished reading the shortlist, I think in January. I read the last of the 6 books. And I thought overall it was also a very strong list. Like some of my favorite books of 2024 were from the nonfiction prize as well as the fiction prize, but we're talking about nonfiction. And this year, yeah, I'm really happy. It's been a lot easier actually to get my hands on the books from the nonfiction list this year than the fiction list, so I sort of dove all in for that. I also have another one that didn't make the short list, but I have another one on my bedside table right now from the library, so I'll be reading that when we're back from holiday. And yeah, I thought, what a strong long list and a strong short list. And there were a couple of books I was like, oh, I'll only read them if they're shortlisted. These last 2 books, yes. And honestly, I love them both. Like, it was fantastic. So we're gonna go through a short review of each book in the order that I like them. So this is the ratings that I gave when I read them. And I feel like it's really unfair when I go back. I'm like, oh, all of them have stayed with me for a different reason. So it's really difficult, like comparing apple and oranges, like I love them both, but for different tastes. So take that with a grain of salt. So at the bottom of my list, unfortunately, it's not at the bottom because it was such a good book, but it's Raising Hare by Chloe Dalton. I gave this book a 4-star when I read it, which is super strong, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very sort of pastoral, and there was really like quietly beautiful quality to the writing and to sort of the observations and ponderings about nature and about hares and about like our relationship with them. So I thought that was gorgeous. When I put the list in order, I was like, that was at the bottom of my list. Like, I didn't expect that. I really enjoyed it. I think potentially that is the book for me that has the least sort of maybe global and larger picture behind it, because even at the end when Dalton's talking a little bit about the importance of preserving and helping like the conservation of hares, I was literally like, what about other animals? I was about like, what about the hare is more special? Like, I don't feel that I got that. What I got was a very personal experience and like a memoir, and it became like nature writing through the memoir, which I thought was gorgeous, but maybe that's why I ended up at the bottom of my list. The next 3 all have 4.5 stars, so I sort of arranged them in the order that I think I like them, but they're all similar ratings. So in, I guess, 5th place, is Private Revolutions by Yuan. And that's the first one that I read. I'm pretty sure I got the audiobooks, and I thought it was so interesting to get a picture of 4 women growing up in sort of a new age of China. So I think it's sort of mostly set between the 80s and like now basically. And yeah, it was a really interesting portrait and an interesting look into a culture and a very specific time and location without reusing the word interesting. I thought it was very insightful about a country that I personally do not know much about, and it's really interesting to get that perspective of women, especially in a country where, you know, when you hear about historical stuff in China, you think of, you know, the one-child policy and stuff like that, and it's really great to hear the how these women have grown up and what they've gone to do, and a lot of the activism that some of them have gone on to do as well. So yeah, a really, really good read. Next, I put 1,000 Threads by Neneh, and that one I wasn't gonna read it. Like, it sounded interesting, but I don't know this artist. I'm not a huge fan of reading like musical biographies or memoirs or even fiction with music. I struggle with, and my library had an audiobook, so I got it, and I actually really enjoyed this. This is a portrait, it's a memoir really from Neneh. She also narrated the audiobook, which I really enjoyed, and she discusses her life growing up, say, a person of color, like of mixed heritage in Sweden, and then I guess going and living a little bit everywhere in the US and the UK. I feel like somewhere else as well, but I forget the details now. But yeah, she's faced with some really hard things, you know, from alcoholism in her family, and so obviously racism, of sexual assault, and always through that the thread really of all these people which make her story, which I really love, that kind of picture, you know, that imagery, but also the music, all of these different sort of things that have come to make her the artist that she became. And yeah, so I started listening to some of her music. As I was listening to the audiobook, I became really interested because I love the outlook that she had on music as well, and how she expressed that, and coming obviously from her family heritage. And finally, the last 4.5 star book on my list is What the Wild Sea Can Be by Helen. I thought this was going to be a bit of a, I guess, science jargon heavy book, and also because it's, I guess, it's the future of the world's ocean, so there's that little bit of like, is it going to be like these activists, like, you know, screaming into a void almost? But it was most definitely not that. And I actually enjoyed the optimist tone that actually really goes throughout the whole book, from the prelude to the epilogue. And all the different chapters also use an animal specifically, or like a living organism anyway, in the ocean, and she talks about that and makes like the links of like how the oceans are going, and also our impact on the ocean through our relationship with this particular animal, like a shark or an octopus or whichever. She uses easy to understand, like, I think the animals that she uses are things that we know, we've seen, we have images in our heads of these creatures, and almost like a relationship with them. So I think it was really, really interesting, and especially because this is extremely recent. She talks about very modern, I think some of the stuff, like, I guess 2018 to recent years are most of the examples, so I appreciated that as well. Then in second place, and I honestly did not think that this would become second, but I gave Agent Zoe by Clare Mulley 4.75 star, because, I mean, I was gonna give it 5, but I don't know why. I just feel like it didn't quite hit that extra spot. So 4.75. This was so good. This is a biography. It's the untold story of fearless World War II resistance fighter Elżbieta Zawacka. Agent Zoe is the nom de guerre that she goes by during World War II. She's a Polish, so a freedom fighter and messenger and sort of agent of resistance. And I also feel like I had never really read anything that was mostly based in Poland during the war, even though, you know, Poland is in our collective kind of consciousness as being the center of a lot of the atrocities that have happened during World War II. Like, this actually gave me a lot of context for that, like specific details, an untold story of the Polish people and what they went through. And at the center, this woman and her fight for her country and for freedom, and also for the rights of women to be able to fight for their country. And she is responsible for much of that, for women being recognized as part of the armed forces and being treated accordingly and stuff like that. And yeah, truly, truly amazing. This stood on my my bedside table actually for about a month and a half, and then last week I was like, okay, I really need to return it to the library, and also I really need to finish reading it so I can do this review. And I read it in like 2.5 days because I almost couldn't stop myself reading it. It was so interesting, and at first in the first kind of chapter or two I was like, oh, this is really hard stuff, and I don't know how I was gonna make it through, but it's so well written, and it's just, yeah, it flows really well. Like, I think in terms of like Clare Mulley writing and like setting this country, like it's by era, so you get like periods of months or years in the life, and also during the war, obviously. Really a big recommend, even if you're not a big fan of sort of wartime nonfiction, which I'm definitely not. This was excellent. Finally, in first place, and you'll know which book that is, because if you know the list, in first place with 5 stars is The Story of a Heart by Rachel Clarke. This book touched me so much. I cried many times while reading it, and I thought it was very personal. Obviously, if you're going to talk about children dying and being like in critical condition and sort of grief and pain and a lot of these difficult things, it's always going to be very poignant. But what I enjoyed about this as well is that it's an exploration of how we came to be able to do this miracle of literally taking your heart out and putting a new one in there for you to still be alive. Like a truly incredible feat of human invention and you know, almost absurd thought that we've someone imagined that, and then many people have made that happen to what it is today. So I enjoyed that it was like the personal and the kind of more like medical importance of it is what I think made this so good to me. And yeah, this is, I think, going to be one of my favorite books of the year. And I read this, I want to say in like February or March, whenever the list was announced, and I think it will stay that high on my list, because when I think about it, I still think like of some of the details about the research, but also of the story, and also the fight, you know, of the family afterwards to recognize like the organ donation, you know, laws in the UK. Yeah, it's just really a lot of impact within this book, and it's really stayed with me. But as I've said, of all these 6 books, they've all stayed with me for a different reason. I love them all. So even though Raising Hare is last, I love that book. I recommend all of these books to everyone. They were fantastic. So there's a bit of everything depending on, yeah, of what you want. Like the Raising Hare was like nature and pastoral sort of memoir. Private Revolution is a bit more of the global political stuff, and I say global because it's outside of us in Europe, but it's very much about Chinese modern history and a portrayal of women's lives, which is really important. 1,000 Threads is about a woman's life and how all these things have come to build the woman that she's become. It's music, it's growing up between cultures, it's family dynamics and world dynamics as a woman, and you know, it's just really interesting. And I think I'm going to say something controversial, but I think I preferred it to Utlan, and I'm glad that this made the shortlist. What the Wild Sea Can Be is the more scientific version of nature writing from, you know, from Raising Hare. This is more slightly less personal, even though you get these touches, but it's very much about our planet and its life, and ours intrinsically tied with it. Agents, though, is historical nonfiction about World War II, but also about the place of women in the fight. and also the place of a specifically of one woman. And the story of her heart, well, it gets you, really gets you in the heart, in the feels. The story of a young girl who loses her life, but her family agrees to give, you know, her heart and organ donation, and it saves the life of a wee boy. And you know, the whole history of medical scientific innovation that have been able to make this happen. So a fantastic list. I cannot wait to hear the winner. I'll be, like I said, happy if any of these win. I do hope the story of her heart wins, and I think that is definitely like a winner in people's heart of what I've heard. But like I said, I'll be really, really happy if any of them win. So yeah, that's me for now. I'll be back with my review and thoughts on the fiction list very soon. Thank you for watching, and hey, see you back. Bye.